Hello, folks. Welcome to Club Passim. Club Passim is in Allston, Massachusetts today, but it is also anywhere you are. We have been bringing you these streaming shows since last March. It has been over a year since we've had to shut down our in person shows, but with Passim moving online, we have been bringing you all of our same programming. Tonight we have a bunch of stories. I think five or six different stories you're going to be hearing from tonight through Tell&Act, a new partnership that we have forged during quarantine. So, silver linings. But before we get to our show tonight, I want to tell you a bit about Passim and the other things that we do. In addition to these streaming shows that we have most nights of the week, we also run a school of music online. We've moved all of our classes and workshops online so that you can pull that guitar off of the wall and bother your neighbors that are also home all the time with you. We have moved our festivals online as well. This past weekend, we just had our Bluegrass and Old Time Festival called Down Home at Home. And you can go back and watch that. We had 14 hours and a couple classes worth of bluegrass and old time music this weekend. We are also slowly starting to do some stream shows from the club with no audience yet. And we have one of those coming up on Saturday and a couple more scattered throughout. So if you'd like to go to passim.org/stream, you can see the schedule of all of our streaming shows, our remote ones, as well as the ones that are in the club. And you can also donate to support the show tonight. We're suggesting a $12 donation because that's what a ticket would be if you came to see this show in the club. But anything that you can give helps us out. Your donations are going to be split between Passim and Tell&Act so that we can continue to bring you these monthly storytelling series. So thank you for watching. We hope that this brings you joy in some way and maybe encourages you to tell your own stories to your own friends and family. But to tell you a bit more about the show tonight and to introduce our tellers for this evening, I'd like to introduce one of the co-founders of Tell&Act and a good friend from the Mass Mouth days. Here is Cheryl Hamilton.
Hey,
Cheryl.
Abby. Nice to see you. So good.
Yeah. We did skip our monthly Tell&Act last month, but other than that, we've had a good 6 months of quarantine together. So thanks for approaching us and
Thanks for having us and for being so
partnering.
flexible. Pandemic stuff happens, right? But speaking of which, Massachusetts, anybody can get vaccinated. Like, go out, sign up. Oh my God, today. Selfishly, because all of us want to go back to Club Passim. And we want to sit together and hang out and have those amazing fries. I mean, I miss them. But most importantly, I miss the storytelling. As you mentioned, Mass Mouth has been a partner historically with Passim for a decade. And although Mass Mouth did close during the COVID, we are so glad to carry on and bring stories to you, including people that used to feature back in the day when Mass Mouth was live with you all. So thanks for having us, Abby.
Yeah, and another one, as I mentioned at one of the silver linings, another silver lining is being able to grab not just local people right now, but people who are all over the place, and that is represented in our tellers tonight. So I'm excited to get on. I'm gonna pass things over to you. Take it away, Cheryl.
Thank you. Also, it goes without saying, if you haven't heard, there was a server and artist from affiliated with Club Passim that if you've been following was on American Idol, and it's been so much fun to follow him. Personally, a lot of us in the storytelling world were particularly cheering him on because he actually, at Club Passim, while waiting a table one night, was asked by us because we needed one more storyteller to get up and tell. And he's like, really? I didn't even prep. But I was like, everyone has a story. Get up. And he did, and he won. So he won our hearts on American Idol. Check him out. Bean, fantastic Boston-based artist and storyteller. So thanks again, Abby. We're so happy to be here. For those of you that are new to Tell&Act, we are a Boston-based company that harnesses the power of storytelling to transform businesses and nonprofits and individuals' lives. Tonight, we're focusing on the individuals because we offer classes and coaching. And some of the people you'll see tonight are graduates of both and/or. And also, if you're not familiar with us, we are the Curate, the national television program Stories from the Stage, which is filmed here in Boston, but also this year has been filmed around the country virtually. We're actually featuring tellers coming up from Houston and Seattle. If you are watching from Seattle, we are still looking for talent for our virtual show. Go to Tell&Act.com to put your name in. If you are someone local, though, we're filming one more show this spring, and we'll be back in the future. And the theme is time out. So sports and game stories. So take some time out, go on and pitch a story to us, and we would love to hear about them. Again, that's going to Tell&Act. So this evening, you're going to hear 5 stories told by 5 people in different parts of the country. And then we're going to have a short Q&A afterwards to hear more about their stories. And we encourage you, wherever you're watching from, throw some questions in the chat, either about storytelling or particularly around their stories themselves. The theme for the night is chase. And we are all chasing a different direction with our stories. But without further ado, I would really like to welcome you to one of our feature tellers, a longtime friend and someone that I met at Club Passim, where I started storytelling. Julie Baker is a Boston resident who is a writer and a storyteller, story producer, story coach, story teacher. She's got all of the talents. I've been asking people tonight as an introduction 2 questions. Number 1 is, what brings you joy? And the second one is, if you had to chase a food truck down the street, which food truck would it be? And Julie has told me that the thing that's bringing her joy is something she's actually been really reflecting on, because she's been Marie Kondoing her house and deciding what to keep and what not to keep during this time, hunkered down at home. And I know other things she brings joy, she's actually going to be highlighting in her story tonight. The other food truck that she would chase down, but she wondered if they were out there and wants to know, is sushi food trucks. So if you're in the greater Boston area, you own or know of a sushi truck, flow that in the comments as well, because we want to hear about it. You can find lots of Julie's stories on social media. Abby's dropping those in the chat. She's affiliated and branded as Blue Chakra Stories, so you want to explore that. And she particularly specializes in 99-second stories that are on Instagram and another site that I apologize, Julie, I've blanked. But tonight, she's not telling a 99-second story. She's going long form. So without further ado, Miss Julie Baker.
Thank you, Cheryl. When I was a teenager, I chased danger, usually in the form of drugs, alcohol, and bad boys. In my 20s, I cleaned up my act and I found ways to take risks and have fun that was a little safer, like agreeing to be in a dance contest when someone told me I shouldn't because I would embarrass myself. I didn't embarrass myself. I won 3rd place. In my 30s, I got married and had children. And my husband had very, very specific ideas about how moms should behave. In my 40s, I got divorced and I decided to take my adventurous spirit out of the closet. I got a passport. I started traveling the world. I painted my boring white minivan with all different crazy colors, kind of like a cross between the Partridge Family and some hippie van. And I started to kayak on a pond where I went camping every year. In my 50s, I met my friend Robin. She lived on the Boston Harbor. And she asked me, do you kayak? And I said, yeah, but on a pond. And she said, do you want to go kayaking on the harbor? I said, the Boston Harbor, like the ocean? She said, well, we could start with the bay outside of her backyard. And I did that. And then I started thinking, I'm pretty good. I've been kayaking for a few years. How hard could it be? So we went under and through the drawbridge that heads out onto the Boston Harbor, the drawbridge where ships go. And she tried to show me shipping lanes, and I just didn't get it. There are no lines painted on the road. That's what a lane is. But she's showing me buoys, and every time I saw a large boat, and anything bigger than my kayak felt large, I would say to her, is that going to cut me in half? And she would say no. And she would teach me when I was supposed to sort of hold firm and when I was supposed to paddle off to the right or off to the left. So the following summer, she asked me, do you want to go kayaking on the Ponset River? And I thought, okay, we've been on the harbor. We've really explored the harbor. We've gone out to the harbor islands. We packed a lunch. I even went kayaking in a wetsuit in the fall, which I didn't repeat. So I thought, how hard can the river be? I mean, it's a river, right? So I counted on Robin to tell me what the tides and the winds were and why I cared. So I just assumed that within Ponset River, she would tell me the same thing, and that she was just as knowledgeable about river tides, and even if a river had a tide and wind and all of that. So we head out from a landing and we start paddling, and the tide is going out towards the harbor, and we are paddling towards the harbor. So we're really like trucking along and really making ground. And I felt like I am brave, I am strong, I am fierce, until we turned around. The tide was still going out, and now it was really going out. And we turned around just before the mouth of the harbor. And after a while, I realized that I'm pretty strong, but this is hard. Like, I'm really working hard, and I don't seem to be getting anywhere. And I look over at the shore, and there's the Adams Inn. And I'm thinking, okay, didn't I just see the Adams Inn? And I would put my head down and I would paddle, and I'd look up, and there's the Adams Inn. It's still there. I thought, are we in some weird sort of like Bermuda Triangle thing? Like, could there be a Dorchester Triangle? And do. And then I look at Robin. Now, Robin is a certifiable badass. She is the strongest person I know on the water. She doesn't get scared. She doesn't get tired. But she was looking scared. She was looking pissed. And we weren't close enough for me to hear what she was whispering, but I'm pretty sure she was swearing under her breath. So I started to panic. I thought, okay, if Robin is panicking, what the heck? I mean, I had seen Castaway, and I thought, what's going to happen? How long can we survive out here? And what will we do? And, you know, I'm supposed to be meeting my children at home. My ex is dropping them off. And would he know to report it to the authorities? Would he notice that the house was empty? And an hour passes, and there's the Adams Inn again. And I'm thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. What happens if my arms just stop working and a big wave comes and I capsize? What will happen? How will I survive this death-defying act? Why did I say yes to the river? And then I look over to the shore and I see people. I see a family, and they're close enough that I can see that the little boy in the stroller is a boy, and he's blonde, and his pacifier is blue. He is literally a stone's throw away. I realize that the water's not that deep, and even if I had to get out and walk to shore, dragging the kayak or just letting it float down the river, I could do it. And I was like, I don't know, 3 miles from home. This was not danger. The danger was in my mind. I started to laugh, and Robin looked at me like she was going to kill me. And I said, Robin, look. And I pointed to the family with the stroller, and she started to laugh. She was in the same place. And then I said, I think we just need to keep paddling, and we've got to get home eventually. And we did. Took a few more hours. We arrived back at the place where we launched 4 hours after we left. And I learned so much from that whole experience. I am a badass, just like Robin. I love adventure. And all I have to do is think, is this really danger? And just keep paddling. Thank you.
Julie, I love it. Thank you so much. We were talking backstage, like I bought a kayak during the pandemic because I discovered Paddle Boston during the pandemic. I think a lot of us like had to look at our backyards, and I was like, it was next to my house. So I've been having so much fun. So shout out to Paddle Boston. Shout out to you for your storytelling. And I'm looking forward to chatting you at the end of the night. So I'm going to move on. Thanks so much to our next teller. Such good stuff. I hope that you discovered something new during the pandemic, because as Abby said, we have to find some silver linings. One of the things for silver linings for us is that we've been able to discover new storytellers during this time. People being home, they've explored new passions, and this is our next teller, was in that situation. She has a background in nonprofit work. She's also a poet. We love finding poets and writers. We call them page to stagers. So she's coming to us tonight for her first time as a storyteller, although as we say, everybody's been telling stories their whole life. She is a resident of Massachusetts. She lives in Stowe. When I asked her what brings her joy, she said winning a tag with her son. I like that she emphasized the winning part, kind of fun. And when I asked her what food truck she would chase, she said Anna's Taqueria without like a breath. So please join me in a warm virtual welcome to Sophie Wadsworth.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks so much for hosting Club Passim, and great to hear all your stories. So 3 months into the pandemic, it's the first warm day, finally, in June, and we are all desperate for haircuts. We go out in the backyard, we bring out our comb and our scissors and our towels, and we pull the chairs out from the cellar. We have just been hermits, my husband, our 9-year-old son, our cat, and me. So we live in a small town west of Boston. There's woods around here. Coyotes and foxes hang out in our yard from time to time. And I remember when the shutdown began, people talking about how now they could clean out their closet at last, that disaster zone, or could finally start playing guitar. They've always wanted to learn. Well, when the shutdown began, I'd started a new job, executive director at a camp for kids with special needs. And when the shutdown began, I wasn't cleaning out a closet. I was squinting constantly at the state public health website, asking myself, how are we going to pull off camp this summer? By June, we'd canceled camp. We'd had to furlough all our staff, and I was working 50, 60 hours a week remotely. So basically, I'm just trying to keep our son from existing on tortilla chips and Minecraft. And our cat is keeping me grounded through the whole thing. Our cat has had a blind eye since kittenhood and is very much a lap cat. So as I pull in the chair to my desk, he appears and meows, and I lift him up to sit on my lap while I work. So we begin the hair cutting. I'm combing my husband's hair. It's sandy, blonde, going gray. He's in his late 60s. And he's had a few bouts with pneumonia. So we've really taken the isolation really quite seriously. And as I'm cutting, I'm remembering how my father used to cut my mother's hair in the small bathroom with blue tiles. The newspaper would crinkle as she turned. She was an insurance executive and managed lots of people. Ridiculous, she would say. The cost of a haircut these days is just ridiculous. So I keep cutting my husband's hair. I see the wisps, soft, coming down onto the grass. They sort of look like feathers there. And my son is zipping in and out of the house, going in and out of the back door, collecting provisions, books, and snacks, and the all-important haircut for the lollipop for the haircut, that is, which is kind of a deal that we have, that I've got the length of time it takes him to eat the lollipop to finish the haircut. And so as I'm just finishing with my husband's hair. It's looking pretty good now. I glimpse this dark shape moving over on the grass. It's our cat Theo. He's gotten out. And he's trotting over to the edge of the yard. My husband races into the house for food. Our son jumps up, holds out his fingers. Good job. And I just feel utterly, utterly sick. Why today, of all days? We're finally outside and it's warm and we're just chatting and enjoying this beautiful day. And our son, I should tell you, has really bonded with our cat during the quarantine. It's in the pillow fort that this happens, a fort that's provisioned with graphic novels and a bowl of kibble. So it's really just like home. So when our son holds out the bowl of food, the cat turns and comes back with a little bit of interest and sniffs. And then he begins eating. And we all look at each other. And I'm so glad the cat is hungry. Okay, I whisper. Now take him in your arms. And our son gathers the cat in his arms. Let's get him in the house. And just then, Theo squirms and leaps on the grass and bounds back over to the edge of the neighbor's yard. Nonchalantly, he starts sniffing, and then he continues on into the backyard, sort of measuring the distance between him and us. We fan out. We're creeping. We're calling him, and he's moving farther to the edge of that yard. And in a moment, I see him slip under the fence. Beyond the fence is Walcott Road, and it's a narrow curving road. I can barely even see a car coming on, much less a cat. Why today? Why has he gotten out today? He's not a young cat anymore. I can see my son's face, and I say, it's okay. It's not your fault. Don't worry. Don't worry. And I know my husband's a wreck. His cat is who held him together in his childhood, slept on his bed for years. And one day he came home from school, and the cat, his name was Max. Max was just gone. We start phoning the neighbors. I'm cursing myself. Why didn't we give the cat a collar? Nobody knows where he lives. Nobody's ever seen him before. He's always in the house. And so we head back. We left search for maybe 30 minutes and we head back. We sit for a while in the yard. I bring out sandwiches. Can I have my lollipop now? My son asks. I want something fun. And later that afternoon, we're back out in the yard. It's still warm as it's late afternoon. And suddenly I hear a meow. And Theo is nuzzling the leg of my chair. He looks up at me, and one more long meow. And he's back to stay. And it's like we live out here in the yard now with our cat, all eating and cutting each other's hair and talking and laughing. And it's a warm June day. And casually, I bend down and I lift Theo into my arms. And we're all together, all four of us. And I let the warm weight sink in. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sophie. That was beautiful. You could breathe. I'm really proud of you. That's fantastic. I'm also incredibly jealous that you have a pet. Our condo association doesn't allow them, but I would have gotten a dog during the pandemic, I know. So I'm glad you're reunited. I'm glad you have time, and thanks for all you do in the world. So I'm going to introduce our next storyteller. Thanks, Sophie. As Abby said at the top of the night, we've got people coming from all corners of the U.S. tonight. Our next storyteller is a public relations specialist. You can read more about her in the comments, but also kind of new to storytelling. She's been helping other people tell their stories, but tonight she's going to go personal and share one of her own from her life. When I asked what brings her joy, she said reading, which I have to imagine she's had even more time this last year to do. She says specifically historical fiction. And I was trying to decide if I've ever read any historical fiction, and I don't think so. So I can't wait to ask her for some recommendations. And her food truck would be any food truck with pizza. And I agree. Here in New England, I think we could tell maybe Otto's Pizza that they should start considering a food truck. It's one of my favorites. But let's get into the story. So without further ado, coming from us from Tampa, Florida, Miss Dorree Gurdak.
My mother and I are visiting the land of her ancestors, Italy, specifically Florence. It is 2007, and my mother's lifelong travel companion, my father, has passed away a few years before. I love Italy. I have been many times with friends and ex-boyfriends, but this is the first time that my mother and I are in Italy together. It is the second day of our trip in Italy, and we are going shopping. My mother is concerned about how much time it will take and where we need to go specifically. She is 73, she is petite, and she is very organized at all times. I, on the other hand, love to shop through Italy just by wandering and seeing what we stumble upon and taking in all things Italian and beautiful. As we set out on our walk to the shopping area, my mother says, "What if we don't know our way back to the hotel?" My mother is a worrier, and it reminds me of how my father always called her worst case scenario Fran. As we walk down the street, I think to myself, I'm not sure in 37 years how my mother's worry or sometimes pessimistic nature has not rubbed off on me, but it hasn't. I consider myself an eternal optimist, and Italy brings out even more of my carefree nature. As we walk to the shopping area and are about to enter a jewelry store on the Ponte Vecchio, I say to my mother, let's not speak English when we enter. I also am feeling so good because my mother for many years has taught me to dress a certain way, to always wear bold colors, textured clothes, make sure that I stand out, always have amazing shoes and a purse that matches. I am dressed this way, and it is this way that I think that maybe when I enter the jewelry store with my mother, that the salesmen and women will think that I am one of the natives. My mother thinks this is silly when I tell her to keep quiet, as she does speak Italian and she does understand Italian. We enter the jewelry shop and they say hello in Italian, but I think they say that to everyone. My mother quickly talks about being an American and how proud she is to be one. We start looking around the jewelry store as I want to buy a gold cross for my godmother. I find one that I think is perfect and show it to my mother, and she says, "No, absolutely not. That is too expensive." I find another that is a little bit cheaper, and we decide that's the perfect one for my godmother. I then say that I'd like to buy her a special necklace as well as my sister. Again, she protests, but I say, "No, I am buying these for you and my sister." We leave the store, and as we're walking out of the store, I'm so proud that she's not pulled out her credit card and made me feel 13. It's a beautiful day, and as we're walking parallel to the Arno River, we spot a gelato shop. My mother says she'd love to walk in and have some gelato. So we do. We order the gelato, and then about 10 minutes later, we're sitting in this beautiful gelato shop under the Florence sun. The Arno is across from us. There's no one else in the gelato shop. It's just the two of us. And I am so happy to be in Florence with my mother. The gelato comes out, the chocolate gelato that we ordered, and we begin to smile and dig into this gelato. As I look to my right, I see a man, an Italian man, a young Italian man that's pacing. And I say, "Mom, where is your purse? Where is your purse?" Because this uneasy feeling has come over me. And she looks down and she says, "It's gone, it's gone." And immediately the man starts walking away, and I get up and I start chasing him. I am chasing him. My adrenaline is flowing. And I'm thinking to myself, I know this isn't the first time that I've chased the wrong man, but this is the first time I've chased one like this. I've never been robbed before. I've never been robbed before, and I am angry. I follow him and try to make sure that I'm following him in the crowd so that I don't lose him. I approach him, I come up to him. I say, "You took my mother's purse." And he turns around and I shove him on the right side of his shoulder. And all he says back is that he doesn't speak English. And then he fades into the crowd. I walk away so angry and so upset. How could this happen to my mother and I? My mother has taught me everything, all the tips about traveling since I was 16. We know better. We've heard about these long poles that people use to grab your purse from far away. We know this. I arrive back at the gelato shop, and my mother is there screaming at me, saying, "You left me alone with no purse, no cell phone, nothing, Dorree. And while you were gone, the gelato shop owner was calling us stupid Americans. He didn't know that I spoke Italian. And he is in cahoots with those robbers." Sadly, we leave the jewelry shop, or leave the gelato shop. And my mother realizes that not only had we put the jewelry in her purse, but there are personal items, pictures, and a card, a love note from my father on a business card that she had kept in her wallet always. She's overcome with sadness about losing those personal items. We both are extremely sad as we walk back to the hotel. About 3 weeks later, when we're back in the States, my mother calls me and she says, "You're never going to believe what happened today. I received a package." My father and she worked at the same company, and she said she received an envelope, and in the envelope, there were the personal items from Florence, the pictures, and my father's business card that were mailed to his address, his business address, and then someone from his business shared it with my mother internally. And I say, "It was my shove, that robber. He must have felt bad and sent them back." And my mother said, "No, he is absolutely still robbing and at that jewelry shop. It is not the robber. It was some kind Americans that saw this somewhere in Florence and took the time to send this back. It is definitely the Americans." I don't say anything else to my mother, but I want to believe that my shove maybe affected that robber. I'm not letting him or her take my optimism away.
Dorree, I'm going to believe it's the shove, at least a part for you as well. Congratulations. Thanks for sharing your story. I actually also got robbed, but in France, and I got robbed while in bed in a hostel, and they came in my room, they took my backpack and everything, and I just got to tell you, it is really hard to get out of a sleeping bag really fast. like the slipperiness. But I love that you caught your robber. I did not catch mine. And more importantly, I'm glad that you and your mother got the items back. Like, so happy for you. And thanks for sharing
Thank
first
you.
story with Club Passim. I'm going to move on to our fourth storyteller. We've been to Massachusetts. We've been to Florida. We are now going to Houston, Texas. And the last storyteller and this storyteller, who did not know each other until they were backstage tonight, share a passion for fashion. Sarah Shah has quite an interesting career. I'm not going to tell you what she's doing now because it will come out in her story and you'll hear more about it later. But she has a history of helping people find their fashion. But as she told me, it's not just about finding what you look good in, but it's also bringing out your spirit and your confidence. And so I could use some tips. I'm from Maine, where LL Bean is considered high fashion. But Sarah is here to tell a story. And she says what brings her joy. Ooh, Sarah, I forgot what brings you joy. I lost my notes. Joy. Something brings Sarah lots of joy. I will tell you after the break. Sarah, welcome. Thanks for sharing your story.
Hi there. Anything with my dogs is what brings me joy. And unfortunately tonight he's right here and he's making some noise, so hopefully that won't be too much of a problem. So it's 3 a.m. and I'm in bed and the house is perfectly still. Except I'm screaming and clawing out into the dark to find the light. And my heart is beating so fast that I can hear the blood just pounding in my ears. And my husband jolts up. He's been putting up with this for 10 years. And all this time I've let him believe that it's nightmares that make me scream. So he holds my hand as usual and rolls over and starts to go back to sleep. And I'm sitting there shaking, knowing that I'm not going to sleep. Because there's this face looking at me in the dark, just looming over the bed. And it's been there for as long as I can remember. And I've tried ignoring it. I've tried scaring it away. I've tried pretending it's not there, but it's always there. And I didn't mean to tell him, but I did. I said, there's this face in the dark, and its eyes are deep, and it's baring its teeth, and it's hooded in shadows, and I can't make it go away. And so he sits up and looks at me, and I realize, oh God, that actually came out of my mouth. I'm crazy, and now he knows. And so he sits up and looks at me and says, Sarah, I don't see what you see. And he's not the first person that said that. People have been saying that to me my whole life. When I was a kid and woke up screaming, my parents, they'd comfort me with a teddy bear and tell me I was imagining it. And I remember one time I was 16 and screaming and running to their bedroom, begging for help. And they did, they got me help. They took me to a doctor the next day, to this very nice lady. And she spent the next year, every week, trying to convince me that I was imagining it. But the face was still there, and I still couldn't sleep. So on this night, my husband gets out of bed and starts looking around, and he says, show me where it is. Tell me where to go. And he starts trying to help me chase back this thing that's in the dark and been torturing me. And at first that felt wonderful to finally be validated. And even though he didn't see it, he trusted me and he trusted that I did. And that was very new. And for the next couple of days, I thought about that. And then I started to regret having told him. because now I had to do something about it. And I'm an image coach. I speak at Fortune 500 companies, conferences, and seminars. My degree's in physics. There's absolutely nothing in my wheelhouse that's going to help me protect myself from something I don't even want to believe is there in a world that I don't even want to believe exists. And so my friend has this book called Are You Psychic? Like, well, I don't know. And there are exercises in the book, so I figure I'll give it a shot. I don't know what else to do. So I'm sitting in a quiet room, actually this room, just with my eyes closed, inviting the benevolent spirit guides to communicate with me. And it's quiet, and my eyes are closed, and I start to forget what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, I hear Sarah really loud in my ear, like someone's there. So I open my eyes because I really think someone's there, and there's nobody there. I'm like, oh shit, this works. And it's way too scary to do by myself. I gotta find someone to help me. So at a networking event, I got a referral to a feng shui consultant, and she finds negative energy and brings in positive energy to balance it and dissipate it. So I figured that sounds like a great idea. I invite her over, and she analyzes my house and analyzes me and my husband and my dogs and comes up with recommendations. So she recommends that I put my furniture in all these awkward positions and hang wind chimes and place fountains. And so now my bed is sort of in the middle of the room, and it's got all these weird things around it, but the face is still there, and I still can't sleep. So I start taking classes in crystals and auras and chakras and all these different things. And I start going for readings, and my friends come along mostly for entertainment and to keep me company, but I'm there for spiritual guidance. I'm trying to find some real help. And so, the tarot card readers, my friends they get to find out how many children they're going to have, or the twists and turns of their love life. And for me, every single time, the card that comes up is the devil or death. And when my tea leaves get read, I get battles of good and evil. So this leaves me even more confused, even more scared. Because what if that face really is a demon? What if some night I'm just so tired, I don't wake up in time? What am I going to do? So at this point, I'm willing to go anywhere. I'm willing to do anything. And I find myself in a church, and the lights are low, and there's about 300 people in the pews, and we're all chanting Om. And the guy on the stage is dressed in a polo shirt and cargo pants and tube socks, and he's cracking jokes in a Scottish accent. And this is Francis. And when I first met Francis, I told him, hey, I see spirits. And he said, oh, that's cool. I do too. I thought, oh, I really need this to be cool instead of paralyzing. I'm going to go see what this guy is up to. And so he rents space in a church so that he has room to teach his classes. And I go back week after week, and he actually helps me. And he teaches me how to be safe. And I realize, looking back as a kid, that face in the dark is so blurry, and I don't really want to look at it and see what it is because it's terrifying. But each week as I go to class with Francis, I start to look at that face closer, and longer. And after about a year, that blurriness clears and comes into focus, and I realize that the eyes are kind, and the teeth, they're not scary and growling, they're actually a smile. And all this time, the thing that scared me so much was actually a blessing. So now I can sleep all night, and I know that that spirit is there watching over me, keeping me safe.
Sarah, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. I think at the top of the show, when I said the theme was chase, I'm sure that no one immediately went to spirits, but you brought us in, and I thank you so much. And we've talked about this, and we'll talk more in the Q&A, but when we met, I was like, spirits? I don't know. But you have started to shift my mind, and that's what I love about storytelling. We all think about things differently. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about your spirit world during the talkback. So I hope people ask questions, and thank you for now.
Thank you.
So I said there was 5 storytellers. I am the last storyteller because when you ask other people who are first-time tellers to tell, you sometimes have to put yourself out there with a first-time story yourself. And so I'm going to be sharing one to wrap out the event until we go to the Q&A. But I will say things that bring me joy. I mean, obviously storytelling, but also rollerblading and roller skating, anything on wheels. And if I had to follow a food truck, I got to say there's a really good grilled cheese one in Greater Boston, and I could literally follow it for miles. But that might just be to get out of my house these days. So I'm standing on a street corner in downtown Lowell, Massachusetts, a city about 45 minutes north of Boston, but just as diverse. It has immigrants and refugees have resettled there over 100 years, Armenians and Iraqis and Cambodians and Vietnamese, and most recently, Syrians and Congolese and Ugandans and others. And I'm standing there when suddenly my cell phone goes off. This happens often when you're running a refugee resettlement agency. But when I look at the phone, I see that it's Shannon. She's a local reporter for the radio station. And I know what she wants. Inevitably, she's chasing a story. And I like Shannon. She actually writes really beautiful and fair stories on immigration. So naturally, I answer. But let's be honest, I always answer because when someone wants to run a story in the news about immigration, so long as it's positive and fair, I'm going to help. Shannon says, yep, I'm racing a story. And the thing is, it's about Trump's ban on refugee and immigrant arrivals from 7 countries around the world that he's announced that morning. And it's not just any 7 countries, it's 7 countries where most people practice Islam, although not all, something that we forget. Many of all these countries have people of all faiths. And she wants me to see if I can get someone to give her a quote. And I say, I'll do what I can. I like to help you, Shannon. But I also tell her she's not the first reporter to call. I've already heard from the local TV station and from CNN, and everybody wants a quote. She says, I need to know by the end of the day. And I said, I'll do what I can. And I hang up. It's the same thing I said to the others. And I will do what I can, not only because I know these stories are important. And I know my nonprofit would like us to get these stories out. But I also know the stories of immigrants and their voices matter. But the thing is that in a good year, we may get 2 or 3 good stories about immigration. But since the election, people have been calling our office almost weekly. Everybody's interested in the impact of the new administration on our clients. And I've been asking our clients for their voices for a lot. And I don't know if I can call them again. I don't know if I can ask the same Syrian to be interviewed maybe a 6th, 7th, 9th time by now. I've lost track. The light changes and I start walking across the street and I'm like, I don't have time. The deadline I know is for 5 o'clock news and maybe the next morning's paper. And so I text the 3 people that I always text first. 2 young Iraqis and a young Syrian woman who have done interviews before. The young people are faster at texting back, and they're also more often the vocal. I'm actually on my way to a graduation ceremony where a number of our refugee clients are about to finish their healthcare program. I'm really excited. Here in Massachusetts, there's a huge shortage of people working in the health sector, and immigrants, they're finding a way to fill those employees and benefiting everybody. They're becoming self-sufficient, and we're benefiting from support. But when I walk into the room, one of our clients is the feature speaker. And I'm actually happy because I look around and there's the local media. We didn't even have to ask them to come, or somebody else did at least. And I'm particularly happy because most of the people in the room are from Africa, African refugees, people who haven't dominated the news since the Syrian crisis broke in September or since the presidential election. And so they deserve their stories told too. But the media is not the only one not giving them as much attention. A few weeks back, I was invited to join a bunch of volunteers and interested community members in a local suburb that wanted to help our clients. They said, please come and tell us what we can do. And I was sitting in the room doing our presentation because we need volunteers, we need supporters. And when I finished my presentation, a woman very proudly actually raised her hand and she said, so we really want to help Syrian refugees though. And I take a moment and I say, well, that's very kind. But you see, when people support us, we distribute the goods and finances equally because truthfully, we only have 11 Syrian families. It takes about 2 years to get through the resettlement process, but we've got like 50 families from Africa and Southeast Asia and Afghanistan that could also use support. And to my surprise, without shame or a little regret or even like a twinge in her voice, she says, yes, but if we can't help Syrians, we won't get in the news. And I want to tell myself it's because if she's thinking if I'm in the news, we'll get more support, but it feels wrong. And I said, well, I'm sorry, that's not our policy, but maybe we can collaborate in the future. Back at the graduation, our client finishes her speech. She smiles, saying how good it feels to be back in work after being displaced for more than a decade with her children. And I can't stick around for the cake because I have to get back to the office because the reporters are still texting me saying, any update, even though it's been like 30 minutes. I race out of the room and I head back to our office. And when I walk in, it is busy. And not busy with the media, it is busy every day. And I work with this incredible staff that even on the hardest days like today when this news breaks, are still smiling, still welcoming families. In fact, in the lobby is a family of four Somali women. They just arrived last night, fortunately. Somalia is one of the countries on the list that was banned. If this had enacted if they had come 2 days later, they might not have called at all. In fact, they told me that when they were at Heathrow on their layover, when they landed, they saw on the televisions the news about the ban, and they weren't sure they were going to be allowed to get on the flight that brought them to Logan. But here they are, smiling nervously. It's a hard thing to transition to a new country. I go in my office way back in the building with a very small window and sit at my desk and try to take a breath for the first time. As I'm sitting there, I get a text from the two Iraqis. They'll say they'll come down after class. They go to college at the same place we just celebrated the graduation. But I still haven't heard from the Syrian. And I don't blame her. I text her all the time. And I always feel bad because I don't know if it's fair for me to ask her to tell her story again, to talk about the trauma that she lived through or the circumstances that her family fled their home. I don't know if it's just something doesn't have time for. She works 2 jobs and she goes to school. I also know it's a lot to carry on her shoulders because she's the only Syrian in town that will talk to the media. The others want to remain private, which is their right. And maybe that's why she answers. Or maybe she just feels like she should because her agency helped her. Or maybe she feels just a personal obligation to me because, let's be honest, I can be a little persuasive. So I'm kind of proud of her for not answering. But I know that in my texts or other texts from reporters being like, oh, that's great about the Iraqis, but what about the Syrian? And I don't respond. I don't respond because at that exact moment, a woman named Zuleika walks into my office. She's our interpreter. She's here to help the 4 Somali women. And she's smiling, and I'm confused. And I say, have you seen the news? And she says, no, she's busy. She's got kids. And I take a breath because I have to tell her some of the hardest news I have to deliver. It actually reminds me of the time that I had to deliver news 20 years ago when Somali immigrants moved into my hometown in Lewiston, Maine. And I had to deliver equally terrible news to a colleague, an interpreter that I worked with named Mohammed. He had walked in my office one morning saying Hakuna Matata, which was always a joke between him and I would say Kusota Wo in Somali, like the only word I know, which means welcome. On that morning, the mayor of my hometown had written a letter to the Somalis who were arriving and said that Lewiston was maxed out, financially and physically and emotionally maxed out, and they should stop coming. he hadn't seen the paper. And when I showed it to him, he got quiet. And I said, I'm sorry. And he says, you know what? We've lived through worse. And I know it's true, but I haven't lived through this. I haven't seen hate groups come to my hometown and turn their backs. I thought it was the worst thing I was going to live through in my career. But then the election happened in 2016. And that night I crumpled on the floor and had a full-on panic attack. Suddenly the words of my mayor were being echoed across this country. And my husband's holding me and I am crying. I am crying for our clients. I am crying for immigrants who aren't our clients. And I am crying for my staff, because with less arrivals might mean less staff. But fortunately, our team is still here and they're still helping people. And I tell Zuleika to sit down and I say, Zuleika, I have news. I'm really sorry. The administration, the president, he's just said that refugees and immigrants can't come from Somalia. And she looks at me, panicked. You see, she was about to reunite with her mother for the first time after 20 years. And I don't know when to tell her if that's going to happen and how soon, but I tell her people will fight and people will advocate, and I hope it comes true. Just then I got a text again, and it's Zainab. She says she'll be at our office this afternoon as quick as she can. She wants to talk to reporters. Now we're trying to turn our office into like a media studio, and we decided to put the New York Times reporter in the English classroom. We have the CNN upstairs on the third floor. We've got the local television setting up in the other classroom, and that reporter, well, she's in the back room doing an interview in a case specialist office. And just like the way we rotate our refugee clients through offices of English and employment and case management, now our three guests, these three spokespersons for immigrants across the country, are rotating through our offices the same way. And I'm not worried about the two who speak English, who are Iraqis, who have been here several years. They've done this several times. But I am nervous about Zainab. She's only been in the country 6 months and her English is just starting. And I don't know what questions they're going to ask her, and I don't know how she'll feel about answering. But as I sit next to her, as she does the last interview, I realize that I've made a bit of a mistake. In fact, I've made a mistake that so many social workers and volunteers make, which is that I've stolen just a little bit of her agency today. What I mean by that is that all day I was trying to decide for her if she should come in for the interview. I was trying to decide that if I text her, whether she would be interested. And the thing is that she could decide to text me back. And I took that for granted. She could decide if she wanted to do this 7th or 8th interview. And I know that because she and her family decided to flee their country when their house was bombed. She and her family decided if they should go to Turkey or to Greece. They decided on the day that they finally fled and were choosing whether to walk across the land or take a boat to Greece, that they shouldn't take the boat, which is a good thing because that boat the next day capsized and nobody lived. She made a decision if she wanted to work at Walmart and Dunkin' Donuts when she got here. And so I have to trust that maybe I was persuasive, but also know that when she arrived and I said, you don't have to do this, that when she says I do, that I believe her. But the thing I remember most that day was when she looked at the reporter who asked her why she was speaking up. She said, I'm not a terrorist, and people need to know that. And all I could think at the end of the day was, she said that in my office, and I just wish she could have said it in the Oval Office to the president. Thank you. All right, let's go to the Q&A. Really random transition, but can I welcome my fellow storytellers, all of whom tackled Chase in a totally different direction. Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Good.
So I'm so excited to talk about your stories. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube or this direct stream, please post questions to us, but otherwise I'm gonna kick it right off. So tonight we have a mix of people who've been telling stories for a while and people who this is their first time. I'd love to hear something you learned through that experience, just one thing you've learned. And Julie, if you can hark back to the early days and kind of kick it off with something you learned early on in storytelling that you still do.
Yes, I learned early on that I need to take a beat in real time when I step up to the microphone. I take a breath, I take a beat, and I bring myself into the time and place. In this way, when I did it today, staring at the green dot, I brought myself onto the harbor. I brought myself on Onkapog. So I get present in the moment with a breath. I don't go, I take a beat.
Like some of us. I love it, Julie. That's fantastic. I love that you're actually at the bay. Like I think I take a beat, but I forget to take the place. Sarah, Sophie, Dorree, I want to jump in about something you learned just in this first exciting experience of storytelling.
In this moment, this one here, delivering it?
Sure, or in the crafting or the practicing or whatever.
So for the crafting, the thing I've really learned from you, Cheryl, is to say what's happening instead of tell people facts. So to describe the situation, to bring people there with me rather than just tell. And in this moment, to do it without notes and to trust myself that I know the story because it's my life.
Yeah.
That was a little terrifying, but it was probably better than reading it.
Well, it's terrifying, and you're telling a story about being terrified. I mean, like very meta.
Exactly. Somehow, it's perfect.
Dorree, Sophie, anything?
I think just the details, that the balance between the details and the action, because I think sometimes in my own mind's eye, I have a picture of my mother or a picture of what I'm talking about, and I may gloss over some of those details, but I think that balance between action and setting up where you are, I think is incredibly important.
Absolutely. What's so funny, we have an expression in storytelling that seems like an oxymoron, which is we say, show, don't tell. And that's what we just mean, like, show the story. Don't like tell us you have a story or tell us about the story. Literally tell it. And that sometimes is harder than it seems. Sophie.
Well, I was thinking as I shared of how great it was working with you and having you really ask me to go deeper. And I think you do this with your students, not just me, about how I felt and think about, what was my experience, because I love telling stories about other people and tuning into what's going on for them. And I just so appreciated that. And I can feel I have farther to go with that. And what I want to say is it's a gift to move through the process and get closer to what I'm feeling.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for the kind words, but I feel like we learn from each other. I learned from all of you. I mean, Sophie, you do something that I just forget to do, which is like spend time even on the nature, like literally nature. I mean, you have these beautiful imagery of your backyard, and I can feel and I can say, I really got captivated in that. I also forget to tell stories about animals. And I was just like, yeah, they're part of our lives. They're part of our, our families. And so small thing, but I gained that from you for sure.
Oh, thanks.
Dorree, did you do other trips with your mother afterwards, or was that a special one and done?
No, we did China together as well as Italy. And we did a Viking river boat cruise for her 80th birthday. So I have other adventures of Mom and Dorree to tell.
Yeah. Can you give us a snapshot of a Viking river? Like, what is that?
Oh, it's basically a riverboat cruise that went through Germany and Austria. And that was something that she had done with my dad many times. It's probably nobody in this demographic. It's usually targeted towards older people. So I was the youngest person that was part of that cruise, but it was a beautiful experience with her. And it's probably a good story to save for next time.
Absolutely. Oh, and there's so many different themes that could work for. Like yes. Viking, I don't know. That's awesome. No robberies after that?
No robberies.
Oh, thank goodness. Sophie, more haircuts? Like, how's things been? We've all had hard times.
I'll bring them on and you can just tell me how I'm doing. I have gotten better at haircuts, It might be a good, sort of moonlighting. I don't know, it's necessary age, or we say we need diversity of income. You never know. Yeah.
I had my husband cut my hair, I think twice, and he just went snip like 4 times, and I was like, that's it? I spent $100 on a haircut. So we'll see if that continues. I don't know.
What you need is the lollipop, and a really big one, but it could be in reverse. Like, you can't finish until I finish.
But are there other things? Have you been more outside? Are there things that have brought that same feeling of peace or moments of, I don't know, happiness or comfort since that early days?
Well, I actually, yeah, I pulled the pillow fort. I moved the pillow fort through time. The pillow fort has been great.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing like, snuggling up in a couch with books, I admit, with a flashlight dangling from a hanger from a string and then snacks. So it's like the bubble inside the bubble. So that's been big joy. Yeah. I don't
Dorree,
know about calm. I mean, I'm sort of in a pretzel, but yeah, that's been big joy. How about you guys? Like,
I was going to say, Dorree, wait, but Dorree does historical fiction. What's your go-to book genre?
oh, I actually love nonfiction. I'm such a geek, biography and Malcolm Gladwell and yeah, what can I say? Yeah.
So Julie, you're Marie Kondoing your house. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
What
Yes,
have you
I've
learned?
turned her into a verb.
I
Yes.
know. What has that brought you? Have you been surprised by the process?
Oh my God, it's hilarious because at the start of the pandemic, I was stress shopping, and the UPS man was at my house every day, and it was like Christmas because I didn't always remember what I ordered. And then when I sort of took a chill pill on that, I looked up on the space, that 2 feet between the top of your kitchen cabinets and the ceiling. And I found things that were absurd and I needed to get rid of, like a zoodler. I don't know if you know what that is, where it makes noodles out of zucchini. And you cannot pass it off as pasta no matter what sauce you put on top of it. Just a tip. So I started going through the cabinets. I started going through clothes, and you have to hold up each item. If you're Marie Kondoing, you have to hold up each item and say, "Does this bring me joy?" And if it doesn't bring you joy, I put it into the donation bag.
What's one thing you kept that did bring you joy,
Oh, what's something that I bought in the pandemic?
or just kept that has not ended up in the donation pile this year?
The purple leather jacket that I bought for $30 on the Marshall's clearance rack probably 25 years ago when I went shopping for a black trench coat, and I came home with that.
Julie, I find that funny. My husband can't keep, I mean, I know over 500 storyteller now, and he can't keep up with the names, but you are a purple jacket storyteller to him. I mean, literally, that's how he remembers you, which I think is awesome. All right, Sarah. There is many part 2s and 3s and 4s to your story. Can you tell us the next part of that story that we didn't have time for? Where it's gone from there.
Where it's gone from there. So as I've become more comfortable, I've started helping other people deal with their nighttime visitors. And I have a client who's a realtor, and so when she has a house that doesn't sell, I'll clear that out for her. So I'll clear spaces in people's businesses, or we've had really good luck when she has a house that doesn't sell. I'll clear it, and usually sells the next week. So it's kind of funny and unbelievable, but the results are results. So
You can't argue with that.
yeah.
And I think you told me that you let people call you 24/7 because that was your experience.
Wow.
Do
Yeah,
people
I'm on
do
call
that?
24. At first it's hard for them, but once they realize that I'm serious, yeah, they do.
And what do you say for them that you wish someone had said earlier before your husband's genius? And
Right.
what have you said to them?
I ask them to, describe what their situation is. And usually the people that call me in the middle of the night are already my clients, so we have a little bit of a background.
That makes sense.
But to describe, what's the situation, and then, so I'm going to really get on the crazy train here. Everybody has a guardian angel, and you can work with them, and I teach people how to work with theirs. And so we talk to them and we say, okay, can you fix this? Can you do this? And I'll ask them to ask a question and see what answer they get. Or So one thing that seems to happen a lot is people's ears start to ring really loud when they start to work with me. And if it happens in the middle of the night, sometimes it'll keep them up and it's really painful. So I'll say, okay, well, ask your guardian angel if they're trying to communicate with you. And so they get a yes. And okay, can you tell them that that really hurts and to turn it down? And it gets softer. and if it's still too loud, I say, okay, tell them that's still a little too loud and help them calibrate. And so we can usually handle it in 5 or 10 minutes, and so that they don't have to be screaming all night.
It's just remarkable, like
It's
super remarkable.
and I know it sounds crazy, but hey, that's where I live.
No, we talked about this. You can't say crazy because like the people that are with you, they're not crazy. Like we're the ones maybe crazy for not thinking it, like so or understanding it. I think it's really remarkable. Is there anything any of you related to in someone else's story or appreciated in someone else's story, either telling or subject? Or I just love seeing, because storytelling is about connecting, right?
I loved the description of shopping in Italy, because I didn't get a passport till I was 40. And one of my European trips, I went to Italy and I bought a purple, I won't be able to pronounce it, but the place where you were along the water in Florence, yes, Florence, where you were, I bought a purple pocketbook. So I really loved hearing that.
On brand. On brand.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Anybody else?
Sophie, I love the way you talked about your cat and where exactly it was disappearing. And I've had a very similar experience chasing my dog out the back fence and praying it was okay. And
I was going to say, I feel like, I was just going to say, where's the dog?
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Was he too big?
He's in one of those positions that doesn't make for good good TV. At least not on this channel.
We did get nervous when it came to the vase. I was like, don't hit the vase.
That's right. I saw that in the chat. I didn't even know that was happening. Glad he's been walking around.
I love it. Anybody else? Something to connect with?
Well, Cheryl, I think sorry. I was going to say your story was so powerful, just creating, the passion that surrounds what you did as a job, and then the lives of immigrants. I mean, just really bringing that to life, which I think, we read about it, but we don't always maybe connect with it as profoundly as what you shared. So I thought that was really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Tell&Act is trying to get more people to do in the nonprofit world, right? Particularly, like you've got these missions, and so often you tell the story of your clients, but all of us who work in nonprofits have stories, right? And sometimes some of the more interesting ones, because we get the inside scoop, any profession. So I really encourage people, like, don't be afraid to tell your professional stories. I think most of us spend most of our week working, and we have more in common than we think. So thank you. It's fun for me to tell, as hard as it's also cathartic, right? And a lot of feelings after that election. So a place to put them.
So I really liked how you made the parallel of the clients moving through the office, being part of the organization, and then moving through the office, telling their stories.
Thanks.
I like that parallel a lot.
It was good news this week. I mean, it was a mixed bag. We're happy to see the new administration making a increase in arrivals, not the increase we expected, but at least a step, right? A good step. So what is something else you're hoping to learn more about storytelling? I mean, we all learn all the time. Anything else you're hoping to learn in the future or try?
I'm hoping to learn more about producing. I'm hoping to learn more about coaching. I'm hoping to become a better coach, sort of following the examples of you and other people who have coached me. I recently learned something about somebody who sandwiches criticism. He tells compliment, criticism, compliment. And I thought, that's brilliant.
That's awesome. Well, Julie, I mean, likewise, I learned from you. You're somebody who does this, and Matthew Dix storyteller says, like, finding stories in the ordinary and then making them extraordinary. Like, it's easy for me in my profession to be like, that's a crisis. So I'm always having fun with listening to you, to be like, oh yeah, like, God, family stuff, like, talk about it. So, and kayaking. I hope I don't have the kayak experience you had. Anything else anybody want to offer?
Well, I think I'd love to do this in person at some point because I think Sarah mentioned it, but there is a feeling that on Zoom you want to look at your notes and you don't feel there's like a little bit more of a you can look versus standing up in front of a crowd, and I wonder what that feels like because you have to just keep going. I think if you're performing, not that you can't, but there's some crutch here that maybe is not your friend in the Zoom world.
Yeah, it has been a hard transition. I mean, Julia, you should talk about being able to perform other places. It is a hard transition. It's also hard, like, watching yourself. No one in the audience, you get the audience reaction. I don't know I have ideas about my reactions, but yeah, so I think you're all very brave. I think it's hard to start from this place. So congratulations for, like, putting yourself out there to anybody, right? It's not even it's not in Club Passim. Julie, you found one silver lining. You've been performing all over the country now because of Zoom, right?
Yes, and in Canada, so I'm now international. But yeah, I wouldn't have traveled the way I did. I performed in a storytelling game show in LA the other night, and that was really fun. And I'm just sort of really, really embracing the whole Zoomness of it all. I hope that doesn't go away. I really hope, because I wouldn't be able to afford to travel like this. I think, and I've made some great friends. And I've also, one of the things that I really encourage people, I didn't used to be someone who enjoyed feedback. If I was in a class, that was great. But I wasn't somebody who sort of workshopped things with other storytellers. And because I was lonely, I started workshopping with other storytellers on Zoom just to not be alone.
Yeah.
And I have grown so much as a storyteller from getting feedback and giving feedback to other people.
Totally. That's one of the reasons we like having classes. We listen to each other. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we have to wrap up this conversation. Anybody want to offer any final thoughts of anything related to your story or things you didn't get to add but would have, or they're just like, I survived?
Thank you for pushing me to do this, Cheryl, because I was totally ready to not do it tonight. It was been a crazy week and I didn't have time and blah, 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 blah. And she's just not going to have it.
No. Well, Club Passim, we have to, we got a show for them. So thank you for us. So.
You guys were wonderful. You wouldn't have known it was, that you were new storytellers. You were wonderful. And I hope that you keep telling stories. I hope that you look around online while we're on Zoom. You could tell a story almost every night if you wanted to. And I hope that you keep telling stories.
And I'll just jump off on that. I hope that people keep coming to listen to stories. And we do this every third Monday of the month. Eventually, hopefully back in live and together with those French fries. And if you are interested in getting some coaching or classes, check out Tell&Act.com. And again, we've got the TV show and we're looking for talent for Time Out or Seattle storytellers at the moment. So Abby, I'm turning it back to you, or I'm saying good night.
Thank you all so much for that lovely variety of stories. We hope that this also inspired you folks out there to think about some stories and find them in your own life and tell them to folks. And if you want a little help polishing them, you can go to Tell&Act, and they can help you with some extra ideas, some extra feedback to get great ideas from your own life. If you folks enjoyed tonight, please do consider making a donation for the stream. You can go to passim.org/stream, and donations for tonight will be split between Passim so that we can continue to bring you streaming shows like this, and with Tell&Act so that they can continue to find these lovely new diamonds in the rough, such as you saw this evening. These streams will also stay up, so if you missed part of it and you want to go back, or you just loved one of the stories so much that you need to go hear it again, you can go back and relive this. And please do join us next month. Every third Monday you can come right back here to the Passim stream or to the Tell&Act page, and you'll have more stories.
Or go every night and hear amazing music and other events at Club Passim.
There's that too. Yeah, if you're interested in things other than storytelling as well, you can go to passim.org/stream and see all of Passim's offerings as well. We have things most nights of the week. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to our performers, and we'll see you next time.